Totally Killer is a slasher comedy about a girl that goes back in time to the 80s to stop a series of murders. Is it a laugh out loud comedy or just another bad horror movie? So in this new Prime Video movie, a teenager named Jamie goes back in time 35 years to stop a killer from murdering her mom's 3 best friends, teaming up with her mom in the process. I liked that the time travel in this movie was pretty straightforward and comprehensible, especially compared to some other recent movies. So when something different happens in the past, it does alter the future. So while Jamie is obviously making some big changes in the past by trying to save these 3 girls, she is also trying to navigate the way that she talks to her mom in an attempt to avoid changing too many things in her present time. So she goes back to the year 1987, which is of course a very different time, so naturally she experiences quite a bit of culture shock. So of course everyone during this time is very sexist and racist, but also blissfully ignorant of general safety concerns. For an example, they are not past drinking and driving, and they also don't understand that the best way to hide from a serial killer is by hiding in plain sight. And in typical fashion of older coming-of-age stories, all the kids in this movie are super mean to each other. This movie has plenty of jokes throughout it that address the fact that these are the 80s. These were very different times, but also certain things haven't been invented yet. And this part, while funny, just felt all too familiar for me. I just feel like any time I watch a movie that takes place at any time during the 20th century, it's just gonna be packed to the brim with regressions. So all the characters in this movie being the product of their time by being way overly offensive and ignorant just felt like a little bit of a cop-out. Certainly lots of kids back then were regressive compared to kids today, but I just don't think that every character in this movie needed to be a regressive, dim-witted piece of shit. Being a comedy, this movie has plenty of humorous dialogue. That said, there weren't very many moments in this movie where I personally audibly laughed. But of course, comedy is subjective. Some of you might find this movie hilarious, and that's not to say that you're right or wrong. I do like that the movie pokes a lot of fun at these typical slasher movie cliches, because I'm personally not a big fan of slashers, so that meta humor really worked for me. I'm gonna tread lightly through this next part to avoid sounding like a snooty little comedy critic, but it does kind of feel a bit tone deaf. Like, it feels like the director doesn't understand that there are multiple types of comedy. Like, there isn't just comedy, there's satire, there's absurdism, there's deadpan, there's parodies. It kind of just felt like the movie didn't know what it wanted to be because it kept jumping back and forth between these different comedic styles. It just left me really confused about what kind of movie they were trying to make. Also, nothing in this movie, in my opinion, really set the stage well for time travel. Like, the movie at the beginning just felt like a standard coming-of-age story, and then suddenly, oh, she travels back in time. I feel like they should have leaned harder into absurdism or campy humor to better set the stage leading up to the time travel, because it just ended up feeling like a horror movie in a Disney Channel show. But once we get to the point in the movie where she is back in time and she is actively trying to stop each murder as the situations come up, that's when it actually started to get pretty entertaining and I started to actually regain hope for this movie. That's when the movie actually started to become funny, was because Jamie is trying to save these women's lives and they are treating her like complete garbage and are total morons. It's definitely not the worst comedy I've seen, but it's also not the new Monty Python. I'll say that the movie was fine. It's certainly not something to host a movie night for, but there's enough humor in here to keep most people entertained. If you are in the mood for a comedy movie that is definitely not meant to be taken seriously at all, then you might enjoy this movie. But if you are expecting a good murder mystery with a comedic twist, then you are definitely setting yourself up for disappointment. But those are all just my opinions. I'd be really curious to hear yours down in the comments section below. If you like this video or if it brought you any value at all, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you next time.